So the man who became Buddha was raised a very sheltered life, and he also came from a very wealthy family. And one day, on a rare occasion, he left the palace gates and went out in the surrounding area and saw homelessness and deprivation, poverty, which he, of course, never experienced. And he began to wonder, how do you cope with life and live like that? So what is the meaning of life, if that's what your life is? And so he began this quest, and it actually took about 6 or 7 years, if you believe all the stories, and there are different stories all over the internet about that. But for many years he went out and he was seeking enlightenment. He wanted to know the answers to those burning questions. That what really is there of life, especially when life is hard? And is it still worth living? And if so, how? How do you find meaning in all of that? And so he kept searching and searching and searching until he found enlightenment himself within his own being by searching his own mind. And there began thousands of years of a movement of compassion and the middle way, as they call it. So he found that neither great wealth or extreme deprivation leads to enlightenment. That really what leads to enlightenment is what's within you, what's in your consciousness. And so as we continue this conversation about self-mastery, the Buddha is one of those masters that I think people look to and wonder, was he just the enlightened one? And like Jesus, was he an enlightened one, and us lesser beings can't have that? And both of them had a quest and a mission of letting people know and of teaching people that, yes, this is for all of us. And they were examples of self-mastery. And I think of the most important facet of self-mastery is to know what your foundation is. What do you believe in? And who are you? Because everything else springs from that. If you don't know those two things, life is just crazy and chaotic. And so here were two men who did the work in order to really figure out what that foundation was. And perhaps Jesus always knew that. There are some people, some beings who seem to come onto this planet knowing what the mission is and who they are. But it seems like not all of us have that. And so if we are going to have a life of peace and joy and deep meaning and of some kind of mission and leaving a legacy, whether it's a legacy that you leave with your loved ones in a small subset, a small community, or someone like the Buddha and Jesus, who affected the lives of millions and millions and millions over centuries. And so finding this foundation, identifying it, and then calling it yours, and then living from it, I think is the supreme mission of self-mastery. Because we have to have the foundation if we're going to be able to stand when everything else collapses. And that's what the Buddha became faced with when he walked outside of those palace gates, outside of his sheltered life. And he says, well, how does someone do this? I've never had to do that. What if I had to do that? And then what? And so he found out what worked for him. He went through extreme deprivation, living amongst homeless holy men, and going through sensory deprivation, physical deprivation, and not finding the answer. And instead of going back home and saying, okay, I'm done, he said, the answer's not there, it's got to be somewhere else. So I'll keep looking. And masters do that too. They continue to look for the answer until it comes. Whether it's 6 days, 6 years, 6 months, 60 years. I was probably in my 40s before I found solid ground. My 40s. And everything before that they were steps along the journey. Falling and getting back up. Thinking I had the answer and realizing I didn't. Driving my life into a ditch and crawling back out. Thinking I had something to hold on to, and then it's ripped from my hands. How many times do we go through that and wonder, what is it? Yesterday we started watching a movie called Noble. We haven't finished it yet, but it's about a young woman from Ireland who, her and her siblings end up homeless. Their mother dies and her father's an alcoholic. He ends up just wandering off. And she's the oldest, and she finds ways. She has a beautiful voice, so she ends up singing on street corners, and people give her money. And she goes out and she buys food for her siblings. And they slept in abandoned buildings. So they end up in orphanages and in foster care. And just this terrible, terrible life. And she ends up a teenager and just trying to find her way. She ends up working, or her siblings are scattered in different places. And she ends up getting a job, and she's sleeping in a park at night. And one night when she's trying to crawl over the fence into the cemetery where she's sleeping at night, a group of men accost her. And she's gang raped. And again, she's thinking, oh my gosh. And she does. She steps into churches off and on, and she's in front of the altar saying, now what? What is this? Where do I go from here? And so she keeps hitting these walls, these crises in her life. And she's just lost in looking for, how do I make this work, this life of mine work? Seems like I get to a certain place. It seems like it might be working. And then something happens that just drops me to my knees. And so we haven't finished the movie yet, but she keeps going forward. She keeps moving. She doesn't run. She doesn't run back. She just keeps asking, what's the answer now? And now she's in Vietnam, helping to save little children who are homeless like she was. Trying to open an orphanage in a country that doesn't want her to stay there. And right before we turned it off so we could go to bed at a decent hour, she walks into a church again and she says, you lead, I'll follow. And then a series of things start to happen that lead her to things so that she can start caring for these children who are lost and homeless like she was. And you see her step into her mastery, into her strength, as she starts to walk this journey and fulfill this mission that she says she's had since she was a little girl. That is self-mastery. To keep going even when the rug keeps getting yanked out. Masters go until they know. Go until you know. And then once you know, that governs everything. Just like the song I sang. Let them see you in me. Let them hear you in me. Let them feel you in me. So that everything that you are is a pronouncement of your self-mastery, like Jesus and like the Buddha. And then because you know what your foundation is and what your grounding is and who you are, everything else just flows along with you. Then you know what to do and to say and to feel when you're up against something. Jesus was asked all the time, "Who are you?" He would say, "I am the bread of life. I am the vine and you are the branches. I and the Father are one." This is who I am. And when you say, "This is who I am," like that, then the "this is what I do" is easy. When I got clear about who I am and what my foundation was, then the mission came out of that. The work that I do came out of that. And I discovered I was actually doing the work already. It just may have manifested in different ways. Masters know without a doubt what the foundation is. And you really got to know, it's just not about, I go to church or I believe in God. It's a deep, abiding knowingness that can't be separated from who you are and what you do. And then when people see you around and hear you, they say, "Yes, that makes sense. I know who she is." And then they also know if you step off the path, they'll say, that seems out of character. Self-mastery. Having not control, but a belief and a knowingness. Being able to embrace what you are and where it comes from. And then that way it doesn't matter what you hear, what you see, what you face. It's all clear. We've talked about clarity before. That comes from a foundation that can't be shaken. It comes from having something that can't be bought or stolen or changed by someone else or knocked over when something confronts you. So no matter what shows up, you're clear, and so is everybody else. Because again, remember how we talked about being able to walking the talk and people knowing who you are before you even speak. Because you've got that carriage. You carry what you are and what your foundation is in you, in every cell of your body. And that's what that knowingness is. That's the difference between, I believe that, and this is who I am. This is what it is. No, I can't do that. No, that's not acceptable. That's when relationships get easier. Because somebody can do something that violates what we believe in, and we can say, yeah, I love you, but not that. I don't do that. I remember being pulled around in friendships and feeling, oh my gosh, I really care for this person, and it seemed like we were friends, and then they did such and such. And until I figured out what my foundation was and what I believed in and what my principles and values were, I couldn't say, okay, this is why I'm upset. And so it doesn't mean you don't have grief or some feelings over what's happening, but you're clear about what's happening. So I can say, I value integrity the most. And what you did violated the integrity of our relationship. And so I'm saying no to that. And that's when you can say in your power, I love you, and possibly goodbye. Or, I love you, maybe we can work this out. Be clear about how it gets worked out. That's self-mastery. Doesn't mean you don't feel. It doesn't mean that you don't have thoughts. But it means that you can get clear easily. Because you can go back to the foundation. You keep going back to it. You keep going back. And if there's a question, if there's conflict, if there's confusion, then all you have to do is stop the noise and go within, because this is where it lives. It doesn't live out there. It lives here. And you go in and you say, okay, this is who I am. This is what I believe. That will or will not work. The masters, they stood in what they believed in and just walked the path. The Buddha continued to walk the path. And then millions of people were attracted to that, because you see that and you say, I want some of that, whatever he's got. And what a true master will say is that you have it too. A true master doesn't say, come get some of mine. Oh, this is it. Look at me. I'm so great. The master will always say, find yours. It's there within you. You have it. It's not about me. Self-mastery. How badly do you want it? Because sometimes it's easier, depending on what you think is easy, to give up the power, to let somebody else be the blame or the credit for what happens. Sometimes it seems easier to lay it at somebody else's feet. Oh, my parents didn't give me this. I didn't have that. I didn't have that. There's a whole lot of talk about entitlement and privilege and everything right now. Doesn't matter. Who cares? It's all noise. Because the only privilege is this one within you. The only entitlement that matters is your entitlement of your divinity that says, I am divine. That I and the Father are one. That I am the master of my universe. The rest is noise. The rest is noise. So don't worry about what's coming at you. Don't worry about the stuff hitting the fan. None of it matters. What matters is what lives here, the foundation, the concrete, the cosmic concrete that you stand on, and that you say is your rock. That is what you hold on to, no matter else what happens. No matter what else happens. The Buddha asked, what if it all went away? The privilege, the money, the palace. What if I were the one laying in the gutter? Then what? I often ask myself that question. What if it all went away, the safety net? And my friends that I hold so dear, what if all of a sudden I didn't have them? Could I still stand? Yeah. Most of my immediate family is gone. And yes, it was a journey to find out, could I still stand? And if so, how? And on what? Because I thought I knew what it was until that umbrella, that thing that I thought that covered me, was gone. And then I had to wonder, what is home? What is home? And there were months of struggling with that and trying to feel that and discover that. Because yes, I knew at a certain level, well, that's because I had this safety net. And so I wrestled with my beliefs about what happens when someone else is not on the planet with me. What does that mean for me? Now what do I hold on to? And so I kept going for that answer because I realized, as we get older, this keeps happening. Yes. It keeps happening. And the question is, and then what? On what do we stand? On what do we believe? And so my beliefs about where they all went shifted. Because I wanted self-mastery. I didn't want the grief to overtake me. So I had to find home in here. I had to find them in here. Self-mastery, it'll show up. Your challenges with it will show up at different times in different ways. And yes, it'll feel like that something's trying to yank down this tree you thought you had so deeply rooted in whatever it is you said you believed in, and that was your foundation. Because yes, some days it feels like somebody's yanked your tree out by the roots, right? And you're just flapping around in the wind. And inside you're screaming, now what? And it's the now what, it's the answer to the now what that determines your self-mastery. So masters know what the foundation is and what they believe in and who they are as a result of that. And then they live it. They walk the talk. They walk the talk all the time. Mastery is about being that all the time. Not when it's convenient, not when it's easy, not when everybody else agrees with you, all the time. And sometimes we say, oh, but, oh, no, all the time. But, no, all the time. Even, yeah, all the time. But this came from, yeah, I know, all the time. But I really love this person. Yes, all the time. I thought they loved me. Oh, especially all the time. Yeah. Yeah. So on what do we hang our hats? And if it's not your self-mastery, then you have become a slave to whatever you just hung your hat on. And they get to determine how you live, how you are, how happy you are, how satisfied you are. And they dictate what's next. Or you do the work, and you do it for as long as you have to, until you find out what that is. And then you stand in it. Resplendent. And peaceful. Above all, peaceful. Because without self-mastery, I think peace is elusive. How badly do you want it is the question. Will you go for 6 years trying different things like the Buddha did? Will you sit under a tree meditating like he did, they say, for 6 days until he came to the realization? You keep walking until you find it. No matter what comes in your path along the way. And stuff comes on the path. All the time. Jesus came to say that yes, you have it too. And he said, greater things will you do. Greater things. Wrap your arms around that. A true master. Yes, you can, and you'll be better than I was at it. Self-mastery. Let's take this into meditation.
Okay, before we start meditation,
Yes,
I want to
ma'am.
tell you how much I love and admire your mastery. As I see you every week deliver such powerful messages without a script.
Amen.
And I thank God every day for you.
I love you too, yes. And so my response to that is, that's how I express my mastery.
Not right now.
Oh, not yet.
And each of us has our thing. And I kind of wondered about that because there are days when I think, how many talks do I have that are just going to... It's been a year now. But I realize that one of my daily affirmations is, I am one with divine mind. All that matters, all that is God. And so whenever I start to wonder, next Sunday, what am I going to say? Then I just let it go because I know that's what I stand on.
Well, at least you don't have to worry about duplicating.
Well, sometimes I do. And then I think, well, they must be needing to hear it again.
But it sounds different when you do it again.
I hope so. So yeah, that's part of the journey. Is we start to doubt ourselves and we start to wonder, and I have my moments too. And then you always go back. What is it I believe in? What is I believe in? And here I was affirming every single day, I'm one with divine mind, and it's divine mind that sends those messages. And I can clearly tell you, there are times when I say things, most of the time, but there are times when something comes up and I say it out loud and I think, oh my gosh, I haven't thought about that in forever. Where did that come from? Only divine mind. I didn't do it. Yeah. It's an interesting thing. So it's a matter of us finding where we express our mastery.
I always wonder, who are you, Kim Andrew?
I am the father of one. Yeah. And inspiration, that word I picked, I think has always been there. I think this is the first time I said it out loud. Interesting. And so when I was thinking of that, I then realized that the words that all of you picked, whatever that was, has always been within you. You just probably never said it out loud. And you never stepped into it like you're being called to step into it now. Interesting.
You know, and I believe that, like, that the reason that you teach us so well and have that gift is because you want for us what you want for yourself.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
and that's the ticket.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's you gotta want it for your people. You know, that's just Jesus in a nutshell.
Mhm.
You know, he wanted it for his brothers. You know, that just oozed out of him. He, you know, he goes, man, I want you to, you know, raise the dead. You know, I want you to do these things. And that was, I think that's the beauty.
Yeah, Jesus always invited people to come with him. Come and follow me.
Yeah. I'm gonna see what I'm doing.
Leave what you got. Leave what you got going on and come on, let's go. And there were some people that were like, ooh, don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. And there were others that just dropped it and went. Right?
Mhm. And earlier, like whenever you were talking about, you know, those situations where we get in, you know, it reminded me of the story of Peter, you know, whenever the heat got hot and they went, hey man, do you know that guy over there? And Peter was like, no, I don't even know that dude at all, you know. He was worried about getting himself, you know. And that's where our trueness comes out, you know, on what you were saying earlier, you know, saying, no, I'm not gonna do that with you. I know that you've been buds for a long time, but I ain't going that route, you know, I'm sorry, I love you, but.
But I'm out.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's that moment in Gethsemane where he says, where are you guys? Yeah, I thought we were friends and they're off sleeping somewhere.
Yeah,
So it was easy until the stuff hit the fan. He was like, okay, all right, now what? And so again, yeah, kind of, that's what, Jesus' rug being pulled out from him.
yeah,
And what did he do? He still went
yeah.
where he was being called.
Yeah.
Still went where he was being called. So whether you come or not, whether I got company or not, got to go anyway.
Yeah.
That's mastery. So we're going to continue talking about this next week, and on March 31st, Dottie Gandy will be back and also talking about self-mastery. So we'll keep up this series until we get to Easter, through to Easter. So let's meditate now.